Welcome. We've got an unexpected webinar from Dr. Vijay Murthy, who wanted to share with us some of his secrets. So that's great. I'm sure that we've got lots of APA members on tonight, Carolina tells me, so that's good. Dr. Vijay was one of my teachers. He was the head of the faculty where I learned Ayurveda in New Zealand. He is brilliant for this kind of thing, so I know you're all really going to enjoy it. He used to kind of give us cooking lessons, and we used to go to his home as well as in the classroom and at the college, so he is good. And although he's looking very casual there, he's got more qualifications than you can shake a stick at. So Carolina has nicely put them in the chat box because he's got degrees and PhDs in everything from Ayurvedic medicine to functional medicine to research. And he's spent many, many years training. He's got a master's in public health. He's got a PhD from Australia. He just continues to learn the whole time. Where he finds his energy to carry on and still see clients, I don't know. But have a look at his. It's a pretty impressive CV there. And rather than me reading it out, he has been training, I think, since he was about 6, because I don't see really how he could have got it all done before. So he knows lots of things. He's very practical as well, and he's very good with his clients. I know he specializes in teaching them not just as a doctor, but also how to cook. So he's kind of got his practical head on, and he hasn't got his apron on tonight. I was hoping he might be wearing his chef's apron and we could have had more of a cooking type show, but I don't think you're going to be disappointed, and you didn't come here to hear me. We're going to go through subjects that he's starting with constipation, aren't you, Vijay?
Yes, yeah.
And then if you've got any questions, put them in the chat box. We're going to have a short break in between, and then Colette and Thomas and I will endeavour to ask any questions that you've asked. We've also, Vijay's got somebody helping him who is going to try and focus in on the ingredients. So where it says Dr. Vijay Murthy, if you're on the view that I am with everybody on there, you'll see suddenly bowls of ingredients come up. So no more from me. I think that's enough. Housekeeping will go in the chat room as well. Please stay to the end. We always do have a questionnaire at the end, and over to you, Vijay, please.
Thank you, Sue, and thanks, everybody. I am using my headphone, and I hope you can all hear. Sue, can you give me a thumbs up if you're able to hear me? Okay, fantastic. Okay, so. Okay, so I'm going to start with constipation recipes, because this is what I often see in my practice is, like even my colleagues, they kind of ask if somebody has chronic digestive issues and they have tried everything. One of the things that my colleagues and I, we discuss, are they super poopers? If you're a super pooper, then possibly you really have addressed the most important causative factor that would continue to sustain one's digestive health issues. It's not just about constipation as in what we medically think. If you go to the loo twice a week, you must be quite all right. This is really about establishing an everyday regular practice of clearing the bowels, because that's the most important indicator of detoxification, or that the body, if it is eliminating undigested material, then all other organs are also possibly doing their job of elimination. So let's start with the first recipe, and I have with me Prashant, who is going to be focusing on the ingredients, and I hope it's going to work. So if you can focus on
this, which is
bottle gourd.
So in Hindi, it's called sorry, Prashant, I'm hearing myself.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, we're getting a bit of an echo there, Vijay.
So now can you hear me better, and can you see the ingredients?
Perfect.
Yeah, we can see the ingredients and we can hear you. Can you say something else? We'll just double check.
Yeah, okay. Now it's working, Prashant. So is it working?
Yeah, it sounds okay to me. Thumbs up from the rest of the team if it's okay.
Yeah, okay. So what we have is bottle gourd. And let me actually now focus it, on this camera. Probably it's easier.
We had a bit of a chair leg in there, Vijay, on your one, on the phone one. So.
Okay, so I'm just not going to use the headphones. I'm going to be speaking to my Mac. If you're able to hear, okay, then
Yeah.
it will work. Okay.
Hear you fine. Yeah, that's great.
So for the first one, what we need is a bottle gourd. And in fact, what I would say, it's worth this summer making a trip to an Asian shop or an Indian shop. And so bottle gourd looks like this. And, if you go to an Indian shop, ask them for dujia, yeah, or lauki, Lauki, lauki. And the good thing about this is so the good thing about this, what's it called? No, Prashant, I can't use that. Yeah, sorry. I think you can switch off. Yeah, I will use. Yeah. So the good thing about this is that it has very high fiber content, and it has got such high water content in it that it has very little carbohydrates, and it is also a good source of vitamin C. So it's got good antioxidants. As we know, vitamin C is a laxative, and good amount of water content really keeps our colon hydrated. And the amount of fiber that it has really helps in better formation of stools. So with bottle gourd, it's very easy. All that you are going to do is really going to make a juice out of it. And, it looks quite dark because, I just prepared this juice just before this webinar, and obviously, it oxidizes. So you kind of have this color. All that you need to do is, to this juice of bottle gourd, you're just going to squeeze lemon juice. So I have, as you can see, I have, this bottle gourd, it was just about the same size. So I just cut about 1/4 of it, and I got about a bowl of bottle gourd juice, and then I'm squeezing about half a lemon to it, and then I'm mixing it. And it actually, it tastes delicious. See, if you really want to further kind of make it more potent, I would say just get some, rock salt or Himalayan rock salt, and just take about a few pinches of rock salt. And if you have a pestle and mortar, you are just going to grind it a bit, and you can add that to your lemon and bottle gourd mix, and you can have it. So I would say, let me just try and taste it to see if it's okay. It tastes very cooling. It's actually very refreshing. I mean, in fact, during summer, even if you're not wanting to use this for constipation, you just can make this bottle gourd juice and add a bit of lemon and a little bit of salt. It becomes a very refreshing drink, which you can have, especially in the evening. See, for me right now, my flat, it has got sun from everywhere. It's really hot. like, but if I have a fresh drink of bottle gourd, it's really going to be very refreshing, and also it really can also help in keeping the bowel movements all right. So that's a very simple recipe that you can try at home. Well, if you don't have access, let's say, to an Indian shop or to find bottle gourd, then you just need lemon juice and honey. So all that you do is, always I use good honey, because I lived for a very long time in New Zealand. There will always be Manuka honey in my kitchen, and all that you need is a little bit of honey and lemon juice. In fact, I would even say that, if you are looking at supporting good bowel movement in children and also in the elderly, you just can use this combination of lemon and honey. As you know, it's very delicious. But what you could further do is actually to add this bottle gourd pulp or bottle gourd juice to this lemon and honey, and this will make a perfect drink. And how much should you? It's very delicious. How much should you have? You can have about, let's say, about 90 milliliters. In fact, because it's all water and fiber, as an adult, I would say even go up to, if you're having a cup like this, I would go up, I would fill the entire cup and have it. In fact, you can dilute it with more water and have a large glass of it in the evening to regularize your bowel movements. So what else can we do? See, I'm not sharing with you recipes which are from the classical Ayurvedic textbooks. In the 1990s, when I was teaching women in remote villages as to how to look after their fertility, gynecological health and hygiene, how to look after their children, I had to go to the villages and stay with them for about 3 days, sometimes even 7 days. And while I thought as a young doctor that I can teach them a lot about fertility, gynecology, menstrual health, and hygiene and pediatrics, what I really learned is they told me that we will show you what we do at our homes for various different conditions. And so all of these recipes that I'm going to be sharing with you are not really from the classical textbooks of Ayurveda, but the ones which are used in remote villages in India, in household. And believe me, if they don't work, they would have never used it. And every time you use, it works. So it's a fantastic opportunity. It was for me. And so I'm very excited to share the same thing with you. Today, I'm only going to be showing you a few recipes, but I must have learned hundreds of recipes from these wise women and wise men, and also in our own families, which I'm going to show you when I was working as an internee, working 32 hours, what my father showed me for cold and cough, and how it was much better than any other medication that I ever have taken. So that's about, how to use bottle gourd. And in fact, if you have any skin conditions, like long-term eczema, long-term psoriasis or skin rashes, one of the important things is to keep your gut health all right. And if you can get into the habit of having bottle gourd juice with just diluted with water and have a little bit of honey, may not be lemon, then it really helps also in bringing down the inflammation in the skin. So that's something to try. And in fact, many actually just use bottle gourd juice or just cook bottle gourd and have it in the form of salad, like about 2 or 3 meals every day along with healthy food. And in about a week, they say that the skin starts to glow. It has a very good effect on the skin as well. So let me also show something else, which most of us know, which again was shown to me by these women in the villages, which is using bananas. Really, just not bananas. I'm sure we do know that banana, it keeps our bowel movements regular. But the thing is, they were using bananas at night. They just would chop bananas, and then they would mix it with honey, and they would mix the two and then make it into a nice, like kind of, it looks like a pudding, but it's, and then they just would have it. So banana with honey at night times can be quite useful for relieving constipation or for establishing good bowel habits. But I personally prefer not to have anything which is too sweet or sugary, because I have this ethnic background where most of the adults after the age of 30 tend to be pre-diabetic or end up becoming diabetic at some stage. So instead of bananas, it would be better to use something like bottle gourd, which absolutely is low glycemic. It has such low sugars in them that you could use that one instead of bananas. Okay, so that's those are some simple recipes for constipation. If you have any questions, I'll just open it for you to start the questions, and then we will look at heartburn or acidity, which is another very common problem.
Okay, we do, because the bottle gourd has thrown quite a few people. So Colette and Thomas, do you want to jump in there?
Yes, there's a question about whether you can use lime juice instead of lemon juice.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so this is actually lime and it's not lemon. Yes, you can use lime juice or lemon juice. I think that, lime juice is less acidic than lemon juice, and lemon juice has more sugars than lime juice. So I always kind of prefer lime juice for therapeutic purposes. Just for cooling and for flavor, I prefer lemon. Either can be used.
Also, one question in this regard, Vijay, is do you peel the material? Do you peel or do you use the whole fruit, basically? Vegetable, I guess it is, yeah.
Yes, it's a good question. I tend not to peel because I feel that there's more fiber in the skin. But of course, it makes it tastier if you peel the skin, because that's where all the bitter ingredients are. But to be honest, it's not at all bitter. Go and try it. It really is the least bitter vegetable that I actually have found. So you don't need to really peel.
Thank you. Do you see anything else, Sue?
I think people were asking how you actually juiced it. I remember seeing that. So.
Yeah, how I juiced it. I use either Vitamix or I have got this. Prashant, if you can come here and show. So I've got this blender, and I'm sure if you go online, you can find these grinders. They're called grinders. And just you chop it and you put it in here. And because it has got a lot of water, you actually don't need to add more water when you are grinding it. And if you do need a little bit of water, you can keep adding some water to it.
Okay, and then everyone was, I think, wondering where you got them from. That was one of the first questions.
I went to the shop called Satyam, Satyam, which is in Lewisham, and it's close to Lewisham Market. And they have this cold section where you get all the fresh vegetables.
Okay, well, I think everyone seems quite happy with that. I can't see any more questions, so maybe you can go on to your next recipe, please.
Okay, yeah, sure. So next, I like to show you some recipes for heartburn and belching. Why heartburn and belching? I must say, in my practice, particularly in the last 10 months, the number of digestive issues that I've seen is incredible. And particularly what I'm also noticing more and more, there are a lot of my patients who have been treated for Helicobacter pylori, and then they haven't really come out of this infection successfully, as there's been relapse of H. pylori. And then they have this problem for the last 2 decades, some even 3 decades, both in women and men. And not only that, they have been on proton pump inhibitors for a very long time. And so they use these antacids, and that suppresses their enzymes. And when there is no enzymatic activity, of course, their appetite is upset, their digestion is upset, they can't actually absorb food properly, then they develop food intolerance. So it starts with like a very harmless, simple acidity, which then results in, because of taking excessive amounts of antacids, lack of enzymes, leading to poor digestive or gut health, which results in a bad gut microbiome, which then sets off this inflammation, becoming a chronic gut health issue. So it's very important that when you start to see signs of losing appetite or something coming back when you eat certain foods, when you have acidity, to immediately kind of address it, not with antacids alone, but really to take into account foods that you can use, which can help in neutralizing excess acidity without actually compromising with enzymatic secretion. And one of the things that I would suggest, which would greatly benefit, is again, another probably new vegetable for some of you. This is called ash gourd. And so there are lots of gourds that are used in folklore medicine. One, they're abundantly available. And, they are, and, to be honest, these are so cheap. It's amazing how cheap they are. I went into the market yesterday to get recipes for about 15 or 16 recipes. And I must have spent less than 15 quid to get all of these. So it's really much cheaper than us trying to source some of the best nutritional supplements or the best herbs. And you can imagine, if these are folklore medicine, obviously they would have wanted something which is very, very, very easily available and not expensive as well. But they work very well, this ash gourd. And, ash gourd, again, is also used pretty much in most of Asia. And I think if you go and ask for ash gourd in any Indian shop, you may get a few head nods which would confuse you as to whether they have it or not. So better go to the cold section and look for something which looks like ash gourd. And the other thing that you can do when you can't identify a new vegetable is, my IT friend Prashant, he showed me, you can actually download Google app, which has a camera now. And then if you use that camera and direct it to any plant or any vegetable, it starts to actually recognize which vegetable or which plant it is. I mean, in fact, after Annie McIntyre's webinar, I downloaded this Google camera, and when I go for my walks, because there are so many weeds which are kind of coming to flowering now, like common daisy, meadow buttercup, and purple-eyed Mary. All of these are completely new to me, and I just use this Google lens, and it kind of tells you what it is. So it's also a matter of becoming curious about knowing these new plants or vegetables. On this ash gourd, and what you want to do with ash gourd is, let me actually maybe Prashant, if you come here, I'll show you how to. So ash gourd. Okay, so ash gourd, so it has this thick skin which you don't want to use, much like your watermelon. And then what you have is the inside, which has these seeds. So what I'm going to do is, I'm basically going to carve it. And I'm going to just get rid of the seeds. I mean, there are not many seeds. There's absolutely nothing wrong in actually using these seeds, but they're not necessary. And then what you see here as the pulp, I'm just going to go through like this. And I'm going to cut it into cubes. And then so yeah, you make these cubes and you basically, it's also full of water. You actually just ash gourd, you juice it like in a juicer, like any juicer. And again, with this one, you can add lemon and honey like you did with your bottle gourd. And that, if you take about, let's say 30 milliliters or 90 milliliters, or even up to 100 milliliters, that actually will help in giving you that protection to the mucous membrane. It can neutralize acidity. In fact, you can have it straight after eating, or you can have it to prevent before eating, and that gives you that kind of lining and protection to your mucous membrane. I mean, in fact, you know, you can simply do it, and it's really nice. It's not bitter. It's not sweet, but it's really very refreshing. And try and get some ash gourd, and yeah, you will really like it. And so here we have the ash gourd pulp. Of course, as you can see, this is not so much juice, it's more the pulp. And now if I add a little bit of lemon juice, and you know, honey is a very good healing agent for the mucous membrane. So I'm going to add a little bit of honey. Yeah, it really tastes a little bit bitter. It's more bitter than your bottle gourd, but you know, it's these bitter principles and the cooling effect it has is what really helps in reducing acidity. And you know, any of these, ash gourd and your bottle gourd, they are cooling and they're bitter. And I'm sure, you know, if you are a herbalist or if you know Ayurvedic energetics, they're very pitta pacifying. So they are very good anti-inflammatories. Anti-inflammatory, not for the joints, but for your mucous membrane. So if in your internal environment, your gut, if there is inflammation, to get that kind of cooling effect, these are excellent. And particularly ash gourd is also very good if you start losing too much weight unnecessarily. You know, some people, you know, they may have acidity, they can't eat, and they can only eat small amounts, and they start to become malnourished. In fact, you can start using ash gourd because from an Ayurvedic perspective, it's considered an anabolic. Yes, of course, this is a folklore remedy, but in Ayurveda, this is a very important herb. In Ayurveda, much like Chavanaprash, which is used for mostly supporting respiratory health as a tonic, ash gourd is really used to make a preparation called Kushmanda Valeha. And this Kushmanda is the name for ash gourd in Sanskrit. And that's a very good anabolic, which really helps in those who have difficulty with nutritional absorption to gain weight through good absorption. So what I'm saying is, like ash gourd really also helps in correcting absorption issues. So there's, you can use ash gourd for acidity. And let's then look at, another recipe for ash gourd, and we need to go to this corner, Prashant. So come here, and maybe you can come from here and focus here. So what we have here are, just some raisins. So you can just take about, let's say, a handful of raisins. I mean, this is not even a handful, a little bit more, yeah, like that. And then you will take coriander seeds, and then so you soak coriander seeds and raisins, like with a little bit of water. And then you soak this overnight, okay, like about a handful of raisins and about a teaspoon of coriander soaked in about 100 milliliters of water. And then what you do is you're going to mash it. What I will do is I'm going to wash this pestle and mortar. I only have one pestle and mortar. And I'm going to put it here. And I'm going to you can also use a juicer, if you don't want to be doing this, because that's faster, or a food processor. Obviously, it's a bit tricky to actually completely get it soft in a pestle and mortar. But because you will have soaked it overnight, it would have given all its phytoconstituents into the water. And then what you do is, if you don't like those kind of solid parts, then you can just sieve it. Or if you are someone like me, you actually think, why waste the best things? And I grew up in India. We don't waste anything. In fact, even when our toothpaste, we have run out of it, we keep actually, like squeezing it until we get the last bit of the toothpaste. I sometimes feel that it's a very good habit because you're not unnecessarily wasting anything. So I just would also have the solid bits. And so this is in this folklore medicine actually has been adapted in Ayurveda, and in Sanskrit it's called Dhanyaka Hima. Dhanyaka is coriander, and Hima is a cold tea. Anything where you add water and you soak it overnight and you have it in the morning would be called a Hima or cold tea. And this is perfect. During summers, you really want to get into the habit of using these very cooling and bitter herbs and spices. I mean, this, interestingly, this has quite a different and distinguished flavor. It really smells nice. And, that kind of gentle sweetness of raisins and the bitterness of coriander seed and the cooling effect that it has, the moment you actually drink it, you feel that, like it's like an internal air conditioner, when there's so much heat outside. And if you can have this like a couple of times a day or even 3 times a day, especially when you have acidity, that would be a very good thing to do. So let's also look at another recipe for acidity. And, Prashant, if you can come closer here, this is a very simple thing. Many of us, we think that, Ayurveda always encourages us to have warm food, warm drinks. To be very honest, that's a very Western concept of Ayurveda. It's not actually true that Ayurveda always encourages you to have warm foods and warm drinks. Because, in the West, we drink so much cold food, cold drinks and cold foods. To have that point of difference, many Ayurvedic practitioners in the West, they kind of promote the opposite, saying that, you can't have salads, you can have cold. But that is not true. India is a very hot country. There are so many practices where you use kind of foods which are not only cooling, but also preparations that are cold. One of such thing is, in acidity, is really using cold milk. Cold milk, what you do is you just have a little bit of cold milk, and then, jaggery. Jaggery is, it is palm sugar or it is cane sugar. It should be cane sugar, although you get different kinds of jaggery. Like in India, they mostly make cane sugar, whereas in Sri Lanka, they make palm sugar. You also get a variety of jaggery in Sri Lanka called kittu, which also is very high in minerals. And what you do is you just grate some jaggery into your cold milk. And you just mix it. And you have this, cold milk with jaggery. Again, I must say, if you try these things, you will actually, even if you don't have acidity, you really will like the number of cooling drinks that you can make for summer using these concepts. In folklore traditions, yes, using cold milk with jaggery is a very common practice if someone has acidity. So those are some of the simple recipes that you could use to deal with acidity. So if you have any questions, I'll open it up, Sue, for our participants to ask questions.
Okay, Colette, Thomas, questions, please.
I think we have pretty much answered most of the questions that have been going on in the chat box. Basically, of course, coriander seeds to be crushed. Yes, Colette has answered that. So I think we have gone through the questions as Vijay has been speaking. So,
okay.
There is one, Vijay, there is one question about milk, whether it's inflammatory.
Yes, milk can be inflammatory, especially if you, I generally don't drink cow's milk personally. Now that, I have my friend Prashant, who comes from Gujarat, and they drink a lot of cow's milk. So he's been reintroducing me to cow's milk. But I do I'm generally careful with drinking cow's milk, particularly if it is not A2 milk, especially if there is lactose intolerance. And I would say that's why I'm kind of showing different recipes. If somebody is not lactose intolerant, they actually can handle milk, then that I would say, go for cold milk with jaggery. And I must say, when I was doing my internship, we used to get lots of, and I also worked for about a few months as an emergency medicine doctor, and we used to get a lot of these patients in our emergency room who would come with severe abdominal pain. And our surgeons would ask, what could be the diagnosis? And we would kind of guess, maybe this is peptic ulcer. But then our surgeon would ask, okay, what kind of peptic ulcer do you think this person may have, just by looking at them? And obviously, if they looked underweight and malnourished, then usually that would be a duodenal ulcer, which is formed in the first part of the small intestine, because there, by actually having any milk or anything, it actually will aggravate the condition. Whereas if it was gastric ulcer, which is in the stomach, by actually having milk, it would give that coating on the inflamed mucosa in the stomach, and then that would relieve their pain. So a lot of patients that I saw during my emergency medicine time was that those who had gastric ulcer, who looked plump and well, a little bit carried more weight and had these peptic ulcers, often they had that because they were drinking excessive milk, because that would give them protection. So, I mean, just to kind of add that it depends on the kind of ulcer. If it actually acts as an anti-inflammatory if it's a gastric ulcer, but it would be more inflammatory if it's a duodenal ulcer. But obviously, you would know what kind of ulcer you might have had. But in general, I would say be careful with any milk preparation.
Okay, would you be able, please, to briefly comment on milk alternatives? There has been a question on milk alternatives, goat's milk, nut milks. What is your view on that?
I mean, in this context of acidity or just in general?
No, in the context of acidity and your recipe.
Yeah, they may, use my other recipes like raisins and coriander. If it is acidity, then see, goat's milk is heating, and all nut milks are very heating. In fact, all nut milks will increase acidity as opposed to decreasing acidity. Even if I'm thinking about almond milk or soya milk. So don't use a milk alternative if you're looking at modifying this recipe, but use my other recipes, like jaggery and raisins and coriander, or this ash gourd, instead of going for a milk recipe in that case.
Thank you. I think that answers the question of the audience. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. So now we will look into another very important aspect, which is liver detox. Obviously, because of excesses that we might do, be it due to now the lockdown has been opened up, so maybe you're meeting family and friends, eating out, or maybe because you're not now cooking so much at home because you now have the option of eating out, you might be eating more than normal, hope not. And also, when we take too many herbs, too many nutritional supplements, too many medications, liver definitely is going to be stressed. And so it would be important to kind of from time to time do liver detox. Or when we know that, our skin has lost its luster, or there are pigmentation or hives or rashes, the skin feels a little bit inflamed, then it is time to do liver detox. Or if you have done a little bit too much of alcohol, then also liver detox would be quite helpful. And in general, if there is a long-standing gastrointestinal condition, liver will be affected, because liver has to go through both phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification pathways. And often detoxification pathways are compromised in individuals who have long-term gastrointestinal tract conditions. So doing a liver detox will be excellent. So Prashant, if you can come closer here to liver detox. So all that you need is aloe vera juice, and you need ginger juice, and you need lemon juice. So this is ginger juice, and there is also aloe vera juice. So let me just move it here so you can see it clearly. Ginger juice, aloe vera juice, and then what you are going to do is like for about, let's say, 30 to 50 milliliters of aloe vera juice. I'll have added about 15 milliliters of, fresh ginger juice. And then now I'm going to add just about, couple of squeezes of lemon juice, and then I'm going to mix it. You can see that I actually have retained the fiber of ginger. I do that intentionally because ginger fiber is a very great probiotic. And because it is a very good probiotic, you really don't want to kind of just get rid of the fiber because it just kind of feels unnecessary. So when you have this fibrous ginger juice along with aloe vera juice and lemon, and then you do it like about 2 or 3 times daily. Let me just taste this. It's really kind of quite sharp. It's you can feel the pungency, and also like aloe vera juice has that kind of slight bitterness, and it's also like it has kind of the demulcent effect. So it is something which really is going to protect the mucous membrane. It's going to increase our enzymes. It's going to have that anti-inflammatory effect. It also has this antacid effect, and it's really going to help the liver become activated. I mean, in fact, I think that if we can do this liver detox recipe along with the gourd recipe, those can be a fantastic combination to set our gut health, particularly colon motility, to become regular. Because if we can support our liver is going to stimulate the gallbladder, and there will be the release of bile, and bile is going to increase peristalsis. So with this liver detox, we actually can increase our peristalsis through activating bile. Most of the times in elderly people, what happens is there is not sufficient bile secretion. And so when there is not bile secretion, it actually stagnates the movement of the colon. And then there is dehydration. So if you can use this, even you can go to the extent of combining our bottle gourd recipe along with this liver detox recipe, and make it into one recipe and have it a couple of times a day. This can be really good in supporting the liver and your colon to create a good cycle of detoxification or elimination. So that's about liver detox. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take some of those questions or comments. I hope it's going okay so far.
Yeah. And everyone's, I think everyone's enjoying it because lots of questions. We have got questions on that one. Thank you for putting the recipe in there, Carolina, for somebody that asked. First one, I'm going to start you off, guys. Is liver cleanse safe for most people? Does it depend on current health?
Everything is really dependent on your current health. Nothing is safe if you actually are not going to consider your current health condition. What I would say is, yes, liver detox is safe if you don't have any alcohol-related liver issues. Liver detox is also safe if your liver enzymes in your recent test are not elevated because of medication. Liver detox probably is not so safe if somebody is just going through chemotherapy, or someone is on multiple medications where liver enzymes are possibly elevated. But as a seasonal cleanse, but just as a preventative practice to support the liver to become active, it's good. It would not be very ideal, although it can be a good intervention if someone has gallbladder stones. Because what happens is if someone has gallbladder stones, and you do this liver detox, obviously you're activating the liver. And by activating the liver, you're mobilizing the stones. And if in case that stone gets stuck in the passage of the bile duct, like many of you might know the structure of the liver and gallbladder are connected by two ducts. And these two ducts, like how, two roads join and become the highway, they become the common hepatic duct. And this common hepatic duct then leads into the intestine. But these are quite narrow ducts. And if you're doing liver detox, and if it starts to mobilize the gallstones, if they get stuck in any of the biliary tract or common hepatic duct, then it results in severe colic and you would need to go to A&E. So therefore, if you have a doubt about gallstones, you would need to do this with the help of a health practitioner. But what I'm kind of talking about is, if you want to improve the quality of your skin, the glow, if you want to address something like you have always had some skin issues, dry skin, or a little bit of niggling psoriasis somewhere, or eczema comes up sometime, or maybe you actually are starting to notice that you're not going to the loo as often as you were in the past. It's become irregular. You have done a little bit of too much of alcohol, and you want to detox your liver, this recipe is quite safe. I hope that kind of answers. You always need to look at prevention, and also where there is a medical condition where you need to do these quite cautiously.
Vijay, there was a couple of people asking how long to do this for.
Oh yeah, that's a good question, right? I would say if it is constipation, acidity, you're going to do that for about a couple of months. If it is something like liver detox, keep it for about a month. But any of these that I'm showing you, particularly gastrointestinal tract related, you can safely do it for 2 months. And afterwards, you just want to give it a break of about 15 days or even a month. And who knows, by then your functions may have been regularized. So you may not really need to continue to do it unless it's a chronic issue where you want to give a month's break and then again go on it for another couple of months.
Okay, the next question is, would it help in ulcerative colitis?
Ulcerative colitis is a different condition. In any inflammatory bowel disease, like ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, or even in celiac, it can help as not as a recipe, but mostly as a food, not to treat it. But if you start using bottle gourd, ash gourd, aloe vera, they're all very helpful in keeping the inflammation down. It won't have a curative effect, but these can be functional foods that can be incorporated in these conditions where you are not further contributing to aggravation of the condition.
Okay. Should it be taken on empty stomach or after food, Vijay?
All of these are best to be taken before food because they are largely, as you can see, are in liquid forms. And liquids, they pass through the stomach and the gut much faster. So if you actually take it after food, you're slowing down their transit and also their absorption. So better to be taken before food. However, with acidity recipes, you can take them before food and also after food, depending on the intensity.
Okay, there's also one about the aloe. Have you used fresh aloe or are you using bottled aloe?
I don't have access to fresh aloe. I should start growing fresh aloe. Yes, you can use fresh aloe. I do like the Paka aloe juice, which I use because I trust it. But when you have fresh aloe, one of the things that you can do is really, it's important to scrape off the edges where those prickly edges are. So those thorns, they need to be removed because they have high histaminic activity. So if that gets into the system, then in some, it really can give this histaminic reaction. So it's very important how careful, not like how I showed you how to scoop up this ash cord. It looked more like butchery. But you really need to be quite delicate, and you are going to scrape off those thorny bits, and then you're going to take the skin out, and you're going to cut it into cubes. And what you can do, you can spread it on a plate or in a baking tin. And then if you can sprinkle some Triphala powder on it and leave it overnight, by morning it will become this brownish gelatinous jelly-like aloe vera juice, which is actually a very easy way to make aloe vera juice from fresh aloe vera. And not only that, because it is now fortified with Triphala, will be excellent for your gut and also very good for your liver as well.
Vijay, there's one more question about whether you take aloe vera juice as a supplement in chemotherapy or with raised liver function tests.
Yes, I would say in my experience, it can be taken quite safely, and it does not really elevate or alter liver enzymes in a negative way. Yes, I actually do suggest aloe vera juice, especially when someone is on chemo or radiotherapy, because aloe vera has this cooling effect. Not only that, it also gives that protection to the mucous membrane, particularly in the gut. And even I use aloe vera juice in those who have been diagnosed with colon cancer or rectal cancer, where they are undergoing chemotherapy. But yes, it can be used safely, Colette.
Thanks.
Okay, I think we're ready to move on now to the next one, please.
Okay, so next we go into cold and cough, and I would like Prashant to bring the camera to where we have. So what you want is, this might sound quite interesting or weird, is really onion and garlic. Now, for me, I have an induction stove in this flat, so unfortunately I can't burn it. Maybe I can try using it in the oven. But if you have like gas stove, all that you do is you really burn an entire onion and maybe about 2 or 3 cloves. Here I haven't removed the skin. You would have to remove the layer, one layer here, and then you burn it, and you're going to mix it with a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper, and then you can actually eat a teaspoon or 2 tablespoons of that, like about 2 or 3 times a day. And try this. This really helps in cold and cough. It's almost like in these folklore remedies, it's like their cough syrup. That's what they used to make. Sometimes I've also seen them, what they do is they burn onions, and then they burn garlic, and then what they do is they mash it up, and then to that they add some honey, and then they store it in a jar, and they give it to the elderly or children or anybody, about a teaspoon or 2 teaspoons, and that very soothing, and also it really helps in alleviating the symptoms of coughs and cold. The other thing that you can try is a lemon or lime. You can just burn lemon, whole lemon, and then after burning it, squeeze the juice and then add some honey to it. So burnt lemon, squeezing the juice of burnt lemon and then adding honey to it, or this onion and garlic. In fact, you can do burnt onion, burnt garlic, burnt lemon, and then mix everything together, add some honey, and you can make a syrup. And you want a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. That would be a very good thing to do for cold and cough. I'm now going to show you a recipe that actually my dad always made. You know, like when I was doing my internship in 1995, and then I later went on to doing a diploma in emergency medicine, and then I was working as an emergency medicine doctor. And because I was so curious about learning, although my shift would start at about 8 p.m. and it would end at 8 a.m., because most of the cases, they would get admitted in the middle of the night, whether it is a road traffic accident or ruptured gastric ulcer, or it is a complication, a surgery complication. And I would wanted to follow them during the daytime to see what happened to them when the surgeons and consultants actually came and attended to them after the immediate emergency treatment. So I would stay on from 8 until 2 p.m. So my shifts ended up becoming 18 hours. And I would have just 2 or 3 hours of sleep. And again, I would go to the hospital and did this for a few weeks. And I would come home with being totally exhausted and many times with cold and cough, total exhaustion, because I would be so run down. And then my initial instinct to deal with that was, I would say, okay, I'm just going to take an antihistamine. Those days, chlorpheniramine maleate, CPM, was very common. You just took CPM, you would feel so sleepy, you would sleep for some hours, you would get up and you feel fresh. I mean, I was in my 20s, so it was easy to feel fresh even after a few hours of sleep. And then I would go on to, but then my father, he observed this bad habit of mine, and he stopped and he said, I'm going to confiscate all of your chlorpheniramine maleate and all your antihistamines, and you're going to do what I'm going to show you. And he would do this for me. And I must say, to date, whenever I have cold and when I feel worn out, I do this. And when I prepare this to anybody, they always say it's amazing. So let's kind of look at what that recipe is. So basically, you are going to Prashant, if you can point to it, all these spices. I'm just going to wash the pestle and mortar. So and again, don't be very, very worried about, oh, should it be half a teaspoon, quarter teaspoon? Just use your eye measure. You kind of know that how much you can handle or how much you need. What I do is I'm going to take, let's say, a tablespoon or dessert spoon of cumin. And what I'm going to do is crush cumin. And it's always good to invest in a good pestle and mortar, not just a compounding pestle and mortar, which is just to mix powders, but a strong, solid pestle and mortar. And when you crush this, the amazing aroma of cumin, it's much better than actually using cumin powder, is to actually use cumin seeds. And then I will actually have some ginger. And in fact, you can peel the skin off, or you don't need to if it is organic ginger, because I like the amount of fiber. And then you crush you put this on. So So you crush So this is a nice cumin and ginger combination. Now I'm going to add some pepper. Not a lot, just a little bit of pepper. And to this, I'm going to now add some cinnamon. Again, I'm just going to use cinnamon stick and crush it. Like about 2 or 3 inches of cinnamon. And then I'm going to add 2 or 3 parts of cardamom, again with the skin. And then I'm going to crush it. And now I'm going to add a couple of cloves of, couple of cloves. Okay, so once I have done this, now I can start to heat this up. Let me see if my stove is on. So I'll start with some water. What you can also do is to this add some coriander seeds. Now, I'm going to add this to the water, which is heating. Now, I'm going to now use the dry powders. So the dry powders I'm going to use a tiny bit of ginger powder. You saw that I used both fresh ginger and also ginger powder. And then I'm going to add some turmeric. Now, you can smell the nice aromas of the spices and also the aroma of turmeric. Now what I'm going to do is to add milk. So I would say this you can do even with milk alternatives, like you can have almond milk or soya milk, any of these nut milks, I would say, you can have if you're not having cow's milk. And so it's important to cook it both with milk and water. And then as it keeps cooking, then I'm going to add just a couple of strands or a few strands of saffron. And if you want to sweeten it, while it's cooking, you can use jaggery. But if you want to just sweeten it with honey, which is also very good for cough and cold, then you will wait. Look, Prashant, if you can put this, see, it actually cooks very, very quickly because the milk is boiling. I'm actually just grating some jaggery. I have to be careful that it doesn't boil over. Just as a sweetener. And if you want to sieve it, you can sieve it. Okay, so it's quite yellow, it's quite strong, and I would say, really you need about half a cup of it, and it's quite strong. And if I taste it, it is very strong. And it's very nice. It's almost like you get this, like a kick in your throat kind of sensation. And it's excellent because this is what you need when you have cold and coughs. And this one is particularly good if you're cold and cough. It starts to get worse as it gets in the evening, and in any kind of influenza, it would be very helpful. Or, let's say you feel like, like a little bit of mild burnout, like you feel that you have worked too much, no amount of sleep is helping you, and you just want to knock yourself out and kind of completely kind of give your body that kind of rest, then this would be an excellent recipe, like to really help your body to completely kind of give in to that kind of tiredness and then rebuild from there. That would be a very good thing to do. So that's about, cold and cough. It's about 7:13. So I have a few more recipes to show, but if there are any questions, I'm more than happy to take those questions soon.
I think that Colette and Thomas have been doing a good job answering everyone's questions, so that's good. And I can tell you that Dr. Vijay's made this for me when he came to stay with me to do some work, and I was just about hanging on in there. But he was determined to get some more work out of me, so he made me this and said, "Yeah, you'll feel great in a minute." And and I think, Thomas, you've probably had it as well, haven't you? So. Any questions that we need to do? I think we
do.
Yeah.
There was a question about the first recipe, the first cold recipe. If you can specify when you say you burn the onion, do you kind of cook it until it's a soft consistency? And do you do the same with the garlic?
Yes. Yeah. It's almost like charred onion or charred garlic. Not to the extent that it becomes totally dry, but you can see that kind of caramelization and slight kind of burnt external, but then it would have been cooked from the internal. Inside it would have become soft. It will never be totally cooked, but you can start to see that it's not too dry. It doesn't take more than 5 to 10 minutes to do that.
There was one more question. Sorry, I was just responding. This second drink that you've prepared, would it be too heating if you're prone to pitta imbalances?
Yes, it will be very heating. So it's really very good for extreme vata aggravation, even in a pitta person. See, generally what happens is pitta people are more prone to vata aggravation than vata people. I tell you why. Because if you're pure vata, you're so sensitive, you can't keep carrying on. You actually will relax. You will actually be so sensitive that you feel, yeah, I need good rest. It's the pitta people who undergo extreme vata aggravation because they do not listen to their body. They only listen to their determination and their mind. They keep pushing themselves. And then that heat of pitta, fire, it really completely dries them out. And when there is the dryness combined with the lightness of pitta, that's when the vata becomes very aggravated. So although it can be pitta aggravating, if your vata is excessively aggravated due to overuse of your pitta nature, then this will be an excellent one to reset, to, like I would say, to bring you to your factory reset so that you go back to your normal pitta and vata. You have to be careful. You can actually dilute it with more water, but still, you don't have to be overly cautious that you are going to completely avoid it. In fact, I think excessively pitta individuals are the ones who become totally vata aggravated and worn out.
Okay. Well, can we go on to the next one then, Vijay, please? As time.
Yeah, sure. So the next one is I'm going to show you some simple skin recipes. Maybe, Prashant, you think it's easier here to do that? If we can move this a little bit. Okay, that's fine. So right. So for skin health, what I would say is, if you want to make a face pack, what you can do is you need gram flour. Gram flour is basically chickpea flour. But if you go to any Indian shop or Asian shop and ask for chickpea flour, they may actually give you things which are not necessarily what you're looking for. So you need to really ask for gram flour. Or in Hindi, it's called besan, B-E-S-A-N, besan. And you can actually use this for making pancakes. They're high in protein. They're really very good. So what you do is you use chickpea flour, and then what you're going to do is you're going to add some tomato juice. And in fact, you can just make a chickpea flour and tomato juice combination, and you can use it as a face pack. Leave it on until your skin starts to feel a bit tight, and then you wash it off with cold water. But if you're somebody who has, let's say, tendency for facial hair, and you may have tried laser, you may have done different things, and yet, the facial hair tends to become more and more stubborn, particularly in, women who might have had a history of polycystic ovarian syndrome. I mean, that has to be addressed. But still, if there's a pattern of facial hair growth, what you could also do is really also to add a little bit of turmeric. I mean, clearly, by adding turmeric to chickpea flour and tomato, and when you apply it, your face does become yellow. You have to be careful about it. Of course, it goes away after a couple of days. So for instance, if you don't have to go into an office the next day, it's a good thing to do. Like, let's say you have 3 or 4 days off, and then you really want to ensure that you're cleansing your skin, and there you can actually use turmeric. I mean, in fact, in South India, even to date, in traditional families, women do apply turmeric to their cheeks. And that's basically the practice. Although it's seen as a sacred practice, largely it is to reduce any facial skin. So in fact, turmeric has the ability to reduce that kind of facial skin. And also, when you take turmeric internally, it also will help in correcting that kind of male pattern hair growth. I mean, I'm not saying just by eating turmeric that's going to happen, but there is that advantage of turmeric reducing male pattern hair growth if there are hormonal issues. So you can just use that as a face pack. And the other thing that you can do is, for your, especially if you have oily skin, it's so oily that, especially now in summer, it becomes even more oily. Or if you have a mixed type skin, what you really want is to use bitter gourd. And, bitter gourd, again, like we have looked at different gourds today, like bitter gourd. And let me just chop bitter gourd. I'm sure many of you may have used bitter gourd or seen bitter gourd. So it kind of has this central part, which has these seeds. So you want to get rid of the seeds and you kind of get this ring. And this one, you can juice it. Much like, in your blender, you juice it. It is quite dry, so you do need a little bit of water. And this bitter gourd juice, along with a little bit of lemon. So here we have bitter gourd juice and adding lemon, and then you mix this thoroughly, and then you use this as a face pack that will really help in reducing oiliness. And it is cleansing. Also, if there is tendency for fungal overgrowth, this pack can be really, really useful. And not only that, you can also take the same thing like bitter gourd with lemon, maybe about a tablespoon. Of course, it's very bitter, dilute it with water and take it internally. I think what will be also very helpful is if you are wanting to use these skin recipes, not only to help externally, but internally, not the tomato, but this turmeric, bitter gourd, and cucumber. So if you can actually juice cucumber and have the juice of bitter gourd, and then add a little bit of turmeric, and then you add lemon to it, you make a drink, and you drink about 30 milliliters, let's say 2 or 3 times daily for about a week. While you do this face pack, it helps you both internally and externally. So that's something that you could be doing in order to have, to improve the health of your skin. So I think, I just wanted to share some of the hundreds of folklore remedies that are still used in India. And also I learned a lot of them from Karnataka, in the Western Ghats, the coastal areas of Karnataka. And it's quite fascinating how much wisdom is there and how they practically be used even for us living here in London. So I would open up now for any questions or comments, Sue.
Okay, yeah. I'm going to dive in while other people have time to kind of do. Someone's put here, if it reduces male pattern hair growth, would an excess lead to male pattern balding?
No, not at all, because baldness and male pattern hair growth they follow a very complex hormonal pathways, because if you look at hormones, the hormonal pathway, we have cholesterol. From cholesterol, it goes into DHEA, which is dehydroepiandrosterone. That then splits into forming aldosterons, which are the cortisol. And then the same DHEA is used to produce pregnenolone. And from pregnenolone, we produce progesterone. And from progesterone, we produce estrogens. And from progesterone, we produce testosterone, and from testosterone, we produce estrogens. So in fact, if anything, all of us, whether men or women, we actually are producing testosterone first, even before we produce estrogens. So it is not just when we use hormones just as a replacement, yes, such adverse effects can be seen. But when we start to use natural substances like turmeric, it is going to correct the pathway of production of hormones rather than increasing or decreasing hormones. So it actually doesn't even affect men, even if they are using turmeric, that it doesn't necessarily cause baldness.
Okay, so we've got the face pack. Is it cooling or heating? Not sure because of the tomatoes. And what about if you've got extremely sensitive facial skin?
Chana is very neutralizing. It is a bit drying, but it's quite neutral. Whereas tomato can be a bit irritant. It can irritate if you have sensitive skin, but certainly if you're using bitter gourd, then it is very cooling and it's not an irritant.
Okay. I think because we've done the questions as we've gone, we've done quite well. Have I missed anything, Thomas or Colette?
Just one more question, basically, which says, can these recipes basically be done at different seasons of the year? So basically, I guess, Vijay, are they dependent on the season, or can you at any time, whenever you need, utilize them?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. So if it is to deal with, let's say, constipation or acidity, it can be done any time. But if it is, you're just doing it as a seasonal one, then all the ash gourd and bottle gourd, all these cooling recipes are not ideal during winter. They are better during other seasons because during winter they are excessively cooling.
So that basically answers the other question in this context, that the question was are they for all doshas? So basically Vijay answered this question. So be aware that the recipes for acidity are very bitter pacifying, therefore take with caution during winter time.
Also, we must remember, these are folklore remedies. These are home remedies where they wouldn't be considering that specific aspects of vata, pitta, kapha as practitioners would. So this is basically the wisdom of mothers and grandmothers and aunties and uncles who would give it to anyone, irrespective of their doshas. And because they work well, it would have stayed in the family as a recipe. So therefore, you don't need to worry too much about the doshas, because in home remedies, those who give you home remedies do not necessarily look so much into. They're not specialized in looking into vata, pitta, kapha.
Okay, well, everybody's been saying thank you very much. Fascinating, and you got really good feedback there, Vijay. So it's good to know. I think we've done the questions as we've gone along. So just thank you very much. I think it's a fascinating insight into how you work, because sometimes we can see kind of the doctor title and think white coat, stethoscope, but I think now people come to know you a bit better and see what you do in the kitchen. It's completely, and I know you do this with your clients, don't you? You actually go to clients and you teach them things like this. So I think that's great that we kind of get to see a different side of you. And I'm getting lots of wonderful thank you. And they're very good and they can't wait to try it. Someone says greetings from Germany. Thank you very much. So yeah, I think it's been a really good evening. It's like Annie's. It's a different type of webinar. Annie, we were all trying the herbs. Next time, maybe you'll have to give us a shopping list and we'll all have our bitter gourds and everything with us.
Yeah, sure. I mean, what I've noticed in my practice is really, I think even though we call ourselves a holistic or complementary alternative, many times we still take the model of just giving information as opposed to really changing the environment, teaching something, getting our patients to do something within their own kitchen, within their own environment. Even with, I feel all of these are not just health coaching, but it's a way of mentoring. It's a way of mentoring somebody into becoming resilient and healthy with the resources that they have. And I feel whether you're a doctor or a health professional or a health coach, unless we take such personal interest in our patients or clients' life and change their environment and share our wisdom and experience, it just becomes more like a consultation. A patient seeing a doctor who has expert information but does not translate into kind of enabling them to make simple but powerful changes into their everyday living. And I think that's where I feel we need to kind of get into really working in partnership with our patients, alongside being very careful about their medical history, medical condition, and all of that.
Yeah, no, everyone's saying thank you very much. Very interesting. We've got here, somebody said, please bear in mind that some people have disabilities and they're not able to take notes. So they would have liked the recipes. So we'll try and get those to you. But I think I'm going to speak on behalf of all of the APA organisers here. You've done an amazing job with the webinars that we've put in. Vijay, you've been there interviewing people. Colette and Thomas, you're always in the background. We have numerous meetings to try and get this to this stage. And Tina, she's kind of somewhere there and she does all the reviews for the newsletters. Carolina makes sure it all happens. So there's a whole team of people behind every webinar. And I'd like to thank them all. And I know, Vijay, you've interviewed a lot of people this year, as has Thomas. And it's quite nerve-wracking sometimes, Colette, isn't it? Being in the background, trying to think, have you missed a question as it's all kind of going? So we're not going to be having any more now until September. And I can't remember the date in September. So if anyone does, please put it up in the chat box. I remember it's on cancer. I don't remember who. So forgive me, and then we're going to be starting again. But Vijay, thank you very much. I'm sure we're going to be asking you to share some more recipes and tips. 25th of September, that's when we start again. So everybody's having a break now. And
thanks, and thanks everybody. And I must say, I had the amazing support of Prashant, who is an computer sciences engineer, who's been helping me to make this webinar possible, like choosing the ingredients, putting them together. It's very difficult when you do it on your own. So I really like to thank.
Good camera work there. We all like that. When we get the hang of pinning these, as Carolina's been telling us, pin the two pictures and then you'll be all right. We'll be okay. But yeah, you did a good job. I can't see you. You're in the background now. You've gone. So no, thank you very much. And thank you to everyone for being with us this evening. We'll see you in September.
Yeah, enjoy your summer. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye.